answer to your problem. And you may say, maybe I'm not him. Maybe I'm not the guy for you. Next slide, please. Maybe I'm out for you. And if that's the case, I'm good with that. I'm not for everybody. I don't have so much ego that I think I'm for everybody. But if you know deep down within you that I'm for you and that you're for me,
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining today. I want to first thank Don for allowing me to be a part of this platform. The great work that he's doing with the Reman Project is amazing. Be sure to connect with him as soon as you get an opportunity. So my name is Andrew Landry. I am a founder of a nonprofit organization called Where Men Hurt, where we address real life issues that men deal with on a day to day basis. We talk about everything from infidelity to domestic violence to addictions. We meet right now currently at a barbershop in Humble, Texas, which is east of Houston, and, and things are going well. I am an author. I've published two books. The first book called Overcoming the Addiction That No One Has, and my second book is called After the Violation, a comprehensive guide to healing after being sexually mishandled. I also have a master's degree in pastoral counseling. So I'm going to tell you a little story to get started, and then we will unpack this topic that we have before us today. The topic today is how to recover after a fall. So there's so much to get into this topic. But first, this story will kind of help give you some insight on why this is a very important subject to me and also a very important topic. So when I was a young boy, I was sexually molested at the age of 3, and from 3 to 16, this sexual molestation carried on. It was a combination of a female that was close in our family and also then a male that was close in the family. So during this process, I learned some behaviors that were, not appropriate. So then, through the process of my life, I was sexually promiscuous. So what happened is I ended up getting married right after high school, and obviously then attached to the sexual things that had happened to me, I cheated on my wife, my first wife. And so we stayed married for about 4.5 years. After that, we divorced, and during the time of divorce, I was still very sexually active. Um, Get married again about 5 years later to a young lady, and we stayed married for 10 years. But throughout the whole time, I cheated. and she didn't have a clue about what was going on. And so in 2006, I finally found out what my grade was. And the thing that was evident to me, the thing that was evident to me is that I had an issue, but I didn't know how to solve it. And so one of the things that we'll talk about in this recovering trust is what is the thing that will cause you to recover the trust after a fall. So in 2006, I got saved, met my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But in that process, I was still in a place where I was um, dealing with my sexuality in the form of still having sex outside of my marriage. And so I was a little bit frustrated by it. One, not understanding why that salvation piece didn't work for me. Or, nobody tells you about, the real struggle that comes after being saved. So during the process of this, I talked to my pastor at the time, and one of the things that he revealed to me that was while salvation is instantaneous, deliverance is a process. And so my process had not begun the way that I thought it should. And so he sent me over to a therapist. I visited with the therapist. And one of the things that the therapist said to me is that, he wasn't trying to save my marriage, but if I wanted to be whole and complete, one, I had to trust him and trust the process. And so as I went through the process, he told me to go home, tell my wife at the time about the infidelities. And I was a little standoffish about it because, for this time she didn't know anything about it. And so I reluctantly got home and I told her about it and we talked about it. And then about 3 months later, we ended up filing for divorce. Well, as we were filing for divorce, she was moving out one day, and her cousin was there with me. At the time, he was helping her pack her stuff. And so one of the things that I said to him is that, I'm going to get my wife back one day. And he's like, you crazy, you just cheated on this woman. You've been told these people that you cheated on her with, and she knows all of this. And I said, no, but I trust God will give me my family back. And so we ended up getting a divorce. And then about 3 years later, the opportunity came where we had spoke again. And then God allowed me to have my family back. And while during that time, it was good. I also realized that that really wasn't what God had for me. But because I had put him out there, he was true to his word to give me what it is that I asked for. At the same time, ultimately giving me what I really deserve, which is the wife that I'm married to now. So the reason I tell you this story is because in the process, there are times that we fall. And how to recover that trust is the portion that becomes so hard for us to try to figure out. So we'll break it down in a few different ways. So the first thing we'll look at is, what does trust mean? So when you're looking at trust, it is one of those words in the English language that has both a noun and also a verb. So the noun form of trust is the firm belief in the reliability, truth, and ability or strength of someone or something. So we're going to look at that word trust in a noun and then also the verb. To believe in the reliability, truth, and the ability or strength of. So as we go through this today, we're going to talk about trust as a noun and a verb. We're also going to talk about the word recover and what does that mean. And so when you look at recover, it means to return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength. And so when we look at the sentence, how to recover trust after a fall, we're looking at how to get back to a normal state of health, mind, and strength in someone or something. And then we look at the word fall. The fall is determined by the person or the object offended or the rules that are set in place by authority. We also have to keep in mind that many times falling can be designed to teach us a lesson. Even when you look at little kids, they start riding a bike, they fall. But the fall isn't designed to make them hurt. The fall is designed to help them to learn how to go about riding the bike properly. And so that's what we're going to look at today um, in this particular setting. The one thing that we have to keep in mind is that in looking at trust is that trust is a secondary emotion. There is something that happened or happens that causes us not to trust or causes us to lose trust, causes us to feel like this person can't be trusted. Sometimes that thing is an actual thing. Sometimes it actually is you did something to me, you offended me, you had a discretion against me. It causes me not to trust you. Then on the other hand, there are things that people have from experience will consider a reason not to trust. So maybe formerly you were in a relationship and your spouse would say they're going to the store and you find out later that they were going to meet another person. And so now that emotional trigger will help attach lack of trust to a current relationship. And so now you're in a new relationship and your spouse goes to the store and now you lose trust because of an idea that isn't necessarily true in this situation, but is true in your experience. And so then it causes you to lose trust. We have to be very mindful of those when we bring those into a new relationship because those experiences many times will cause us to deal with emotional disconnects that are not necessarily needed or necessarily required in that particular situation. So to recover or regain trust, one of the things that we have to really do is examine ourselves. And now I can't speak for women, but for we as men, sometimes we're not really looking for that regaining of trust or that recovering of trust. What we're really looking for is for the consequences to go away. So let's say, for instance, that John cheated on his wife, and John's remorseful, John's upset, John's disappointed, and so John takes the position of, "I'm apologize, I want it to be over, let's go forward," not recognizing that there are consequences that come with that. And so he gets frustrated, decides that, I don't want to do this. I don't want to keep going through this thing. You keep bringing it up. You keep holding it over my head. But what he really wants is for the consequences to go away, not to really put in the work to regain the trust or to recover the trust. And so the indiscretion will many times cause us to get to a place where we are fed up or overly tired of having to go through the processes in order to be able to recover effectively from the fall. Dr. Samantha Burns made a quote that was really important as I was doing some research on this. It says, ultimately, trust is broken when your actions are not consistent with your words. So when we look at building trust, gaining trust, recovering trust, one of the primary things that we have to do is show consistency. We have to be able to present information that is consistent with our actions, our thoughts, and our priorities. And we have to also remember that in relationships, without trust, you have nothing. There's nothing to build on. There's nothing that is available to really have a solid foundation. And so we have to be mindful that in order to have a solid foundation, we're going to have to be in a place where we can either trust, recover trust, or to begin trust. So this is what we do. These are some of the steps that are very important for us to recover trust after a fall. Also, you have to keep in mind the one thing about this is that this is a two-part process. It's not just one person's responsibility, it is two people. So first, if you're the one that has broken trust, you're the one that has had the indiscretion, the one that has caused the disagreement or disappointment in the relationship, the first thing you have to do is be honest. You got to come out. You got to talk about it. You got to let the truth be known as it really is. Because without honesty, you're just falling into another spiral attack that will not allow you to get to a better place in this particular situation. So first, be honest. Talk about the issue. Talk about what happened. Talk about the thought processes behind it, so that now you can start building a clean slate. So you can start working towards getting to be whole and healed. The second thing you have to do is you have to be vulnerable. You have to open yourself up. You have to be transparent. You have to be able to give yourself away emotionally in this situation so that the other person, the offended person, can see the sincerity of what you have put them through, can see the sincerity of how you feel about what you put them through, to be able to decipher if you are one of those that are just ready for the consequences to go away, or are you one of those that are really sincere and remorseful about the hurt, harm, and danger that you've caused to their lives. The next thing, which is probably one of the things that I believe is one of the hardest things to do, is have meaningful conversations. Have the hard conversations. Talk about the real issues. Talk about the root causes of what it is that caused you as a person to make that decision. Because in many cases where trust is broken, it is not a forced decision. It is not something that someone held a gun to your head and said, "Oh, you have to do this." Most times, it has been a calculated thought process that allows us to make those decisions to to hurt or harm that person that we're connected to. And so, having the hard conversations, I believe, is one of the most important things, but also it's one of the hardest things because typically, as men, we're not really interested in the hard conversations, generally speaking. We're interested in the quick fix. We're interested in the microwave dinner. We're interested in let's get this over so we can get to the next thing. Not really paying attention or being focused on having these conversations will allow us to now get to a root cause and also allow our partner or the person that we've hurt, whether it be friend, family, or even opponent, to really see that this is the reason, this is the idea behind which I had this decision that I made. And so now it becomes more an intimate relationship because now the person is really diving into who you really are, what really makes you the way you are. So as I was telling you my story, one of the things that I'll mention is because I was sexually molested as a young boy, there were some things that I didn't know that was hurting people that I was doing. So while generally you know right from wrong, that thought process is as a child I was taught to have sex, so I have sex. And so I didn't really look at the negative impact on the people that I was attached to. All I looked at was fulfilling what it is that I was designed to do, or what I thought I was designed to do. But being able to go to my wife at that time and say, hey, you know, part of the reason why I have developed these characteristics and habits is because I was molested as a child. I understood at a point that for me to really get to the root cause of what caused me to be what I was, I had to be able to have the hard conversation. But then that also allowed my partner at the time to be able to know me, to understand some of my thought processes and my mannerisms, because now I've been open and I've been vulnerable. The last thing I would say on this part is that we have to be fully transparent. As men, we wear this mask, and I've heard this several times in the session. The mask, the mask. We wear this mask. There's this idea that we can't break. There's that idea that we got to be strong. There's this idea that we have to carry the world on our shoulders. And the thing is, it's just an idea. We have to get to a place where we can be honest with ourselves first. And we can be honest with ourselves. If we can really just look inside of our own internal ineptitudes, we can see that when we become honest, then that's when that change or transformation will start to occur. The problem is, it's a lot easier to stay the same than it is to change. It's a lot easier to continue doing what we were doing or what we are doing or what we're engaged in than it is to change. One of the big struggles for me, I'm always trying to make sure I lose weight and eat healthy. Well, it all sounds good until I get to the restaurant. Then I'm like, that looks really good. I think I'll try that. And so, a part of the things, if I just be honest and say, look, I'm probably going to eat bad. And until I start eating better, I'm going to look the way I look. But it has to start with me internally. And that's one of the things that I find that men are really lacking in is transparency, vulnerability. So now, as I talk through these programs, one of the things about this is that this is what happens when you have hurt someone. These are some of the things that you have to do. These are the things that you have to take on or take ownership of. But then, like I told you earlier, there are some things that are, on the other hand, that the other person needs to do. And so maybe you're that other person in this scenario. Maybe you're the person that was cheated on. Maybe you're the person that was that held somebody had a discretion against. Maybe you're the person that was hurt. And so there are some things in order for this to be full circle that have to be really addressed on your end also. It's not just one size fits all. It is both sides working together if they have a desire to come together. And the thing about trust is, we said earlier, without trust, there's nothing. If you know within yourself that you don't want to trust this person, you're not going to put in the work to trust the person, or you're not going to make the sacrifices to trust the person, then there's some things that need to be looked at additionally. Maybe there's an avenue to find out, the real root cause of the hurt and, what you can do to fix the hurt. But it has to be a conscious, intentional effort so that you can get to a better place. And even if it is a place where you decide you don't want to be in that relationship anymore, or don't want to be a part of that relationship, the first thing you have to do is you have to learn to forgive. Not only forgive yourself, but you have to learn how to forgive the person that had the indiscretion. Oh yeah, and that sounds easy, it sounds easy, forgive, 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 but what does that really mean? It's forgiveness, forgive and don't forget, it's forgiveness, oh you did it, and so I'm not gonna bother with you anymore, or it's forgiveness, you made an indiscretion, and let's work together to try to make this the best amicable solution that we can. And sometimes those solutions are not, oh, we're going to stay together or we're going to be together. Sometimes those solutions are, this is the best for each person in that scenario. And so you have to recognize that we have to forgive. And when you have hurt someone, or when you have been improper in a relationship with somebody that caused them to lose trust, one of the primary things that is important to keep in mind is that you don't get to determine how long it takes for them to heal. You don't get to put a time limit on when they should be better. You have to give them as much time as they need if you are truly interested in trying to heal and recover from a fall, especially when trust is involved. The other thing is you got to take things slowly. You cannot afford to try to rush. Rushing will not give you a fair assessment of the recovery. When you look at athletes and they get hurt, Typically those that rush back are the ones that are hurt first. But the ones that take their time, the ones that sit out for a year, I think KD comes to mind right off the top of my head. Got hurt, could have came back early, but decided to stay out for the whole year. So obviously we can't see what that looks like in the future, but typically in those situations, that person has really looked at the recovery process. They have really had an opportunity to rehab. They've had an opportunity to build strength and endurance. And those are the things that are vital to that recovery. Is taking it slow, making sure that you are getting a fair assessment of the situation. Sometimes we become emotionally attached or even emotionally detached. And what we do is we rush to get past it thinking that it's over. And a lot of times it's not over. It's just a facade. It's really just covered over. And then that later on will yield itself and manifest itself in different ways. So be prepared for that if you do rush. One of the other things that is vitally important is recognizing and accept that the relationship may have changed. It can also draw you closer, but it may pull you apart. So you have to look at the dynamics of the relationship once the trust has been broken. You have to determine how do you make this thing work? How do you put this together? And if it's possible, you have to understand that the relationship is going to change. There are going to be things about the relationship that are not going to be the same. And so you have to be willing to accept that, especially as a person that has caused the indiscretion. You have to be willing to accept that role and understand where your partner or the other party is coming from, and how they have that. They may have that right to feel that way until you can consistently bring back them to a place where they can trust you again. And trust is not always a non-winning battle. You can regain trust in people. Um, it's just a matter of are you willing to do the work that is required to do it. Another part that I think is vitally important too is also um, working out why you hurt them. And I think we mentioned a little bit earlier, um, finding out what is the root cause. What is it that caused this person or caused you to make that decision that hurt this person? What inside of you that is um, disturbing to this person that causes them to not trust you? And we talked about earlier about there being some instances where it's just a person's thoughts or imaginations that causes them to think that way. In those situations, that has to come from you to be reassuring that, no, that is not who I am, or that is not what I'm doing. But when you have actually hurt somebody, you've actually, for instance, if you cheated on your wife, what causes you to cheat? What causes you to seek out someone else outside your marriage? What is that thing that is deeply embedded in you that causes you to offend that person? And so I speak a lot about cheating because it's something that I've experienced. And so one of the things that my struggle was, I knew I cheated, but my cheating was out of greed and selfishness. And so since it was from there, it wasn't a big deal because I would do whatever I had to do to get whatever I wanted to get. But then once I really dig deep inside of myself and once I really start connecting with the greater inside of me, then I started to change. And so now, being married for the third time, I'm in a committed relationship with my wife where there's no cheating or no indiscretions in that area. Now, there's some things I do need to work on as a husband. Obviously, being empathetic is something that I struggle with. Um, Not really providing her the security that she really wants, desires emotionally. But the cheating part is not an issue for me. But it was because I found the greater thing in me to help me really deal with the root cause of the cheating part. And so now I have to work on the other root parts of the lack of empathy or the lack of emotional support. So Work out the things, work out within yourself what hurt them and why you chose to make the decision to hurt them. The other thing that I see a lot is where we miss the ball, especially as men, is listening to our partners. You know, really listening to what they're saying, listening to what their heart is about a situation. We have to really step back and put ourselves in a to hear their vantage point. We have to be reminded that we can't determine how they feel or what triggers that cause them to have that lack of trust manifested. We don't have a say in those things, but we do have an ear in those things. We have to hear that spouse in the earlier scenario saying, "Hey, when I was married before, my husband cheated on me, and he said he was going to the store, and so every time we go to the store, that's a trigger for me." Well, typically as men, we're like, "Yeah, well, I ain't caused that, so why you bring that to me?" And that is the absolute wrong way to do it. We have to go to a place where we stand on their side, where we see from their vantage point. We see what they're talking about and what they're feeling so that we can now have that empathy and we can really understand where they're coming from. And so be reminded that listening to your partner is not just hearing what they're saying, but hearing what they're feeling, hearing what they're not saying. And that comes into play when we look at communicating effectively one with another. Um, so we talked about that. The other thing I want to talk about is as a person that has been um, on the other side, is both of them are connected with having open conversations. Being open about what you hear the other party saying, being open to really understand what they're talking about, and you have to be available to hear what is being presented. I think with me, I don't really like when it comes across as criticism, but many times it's not criticism; it's just truth. And so I have to be available, and also to you to be able to hear what's really being presented if in that same scenario, if she's talking about her husband went to the store and cheated, then you have to hear that what she's really presenting is there's a fear when you say you go to the store, not that I don't want you to go to the store. And so we have to really be open to hear those conversations. We have to be compassionate and understanding and recognize that not all those situations are directly tied to us, but they are directly affected by it. The other thing you need to do is you need to get back to a healthy relationship and recovering from a fall after trust issues. Is you have to be able to have measurable goals. You have to be able to put out there what it is that you're looking for, what it is going to take for you to feel comfortable in this relationship to start rebuilding your trust. You have to have measurable goals. You have to have um, goals that are clearly and plainly written out so that you each can hold each other accountable. And I like the idea of writing them instead of just verbally, because verbally it's easy to forget. I mean, we got a thousand things going on, just in this minute, a thousand thoughts going on, in the next 10 minutes. I mean, there's so much things that are going on that I think it's vital that you write those goals down. You write down what it is that you're looking for. Write down what you expect, and then you come to a compromise. You come to an agreement. So if we look back, if the wife is saying, "Look, I have an issue, or I feel threatened when you go to the store," then maybe a written goal is when I go to the store, I'll talk to you on the phone, or when I go to the store, you ride with me. But have those goals written so that you can work together towards really rebuilding this trust and recovering the trust after you fall. Now, probably one of the most important things I think that we can do, and I'm a big advocate for this, is we have to talk about that betrayal to a confidant or professional. Um, and so that could be pastor, it could be, you know, a licensed professional counselor, clinical psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever it is, there needs to be some really releasing of that information to somebody that is objective, somebody that can give you insight beyond what you can see. One of the things I think Don said earlier was, you know, we self-medicate. You know, this is not an issue that we can all do by ourselves. We have to look at getting the professional help that we need. I know many times it's frowned on or had been frowned on before about, you know, going to counseling. I think counseling is one of the greatest tools available to us right now to be able to help us to get past the junk that we've been through in life. And I believe that in everyone's life, at some point, they do need a therapist. You know, I have my personal therapist. My wife has one. My wife's a licensed professional counselor. But we recognize that there has to be a sense of objectivity in some of the things that we're dealing with, and we can't always be objective when we're dealing with our own problems. So getting that help from mental health therapy is vitally important to rebuilding trust. One of the things that I suggest is not only doing individual counseling, but also doing couples counseling. So this way, you can address whatever that root cause is that caused you to have the indiscretion or to cause that lack of trust. And then the couples can also come together where you can both talk about it in a safe place, in a non-judgmental place, in an objective place, where now you can really start looking at how do we get this relationship to a place where we can really start building, growing, and being effective. One of the things I talk to some people, I have a degree in pastoral counseling, although I'm not a pastor. One of the things that I talk to people about is how do you effectively get to a good place in your relationship when you know that there has been trauma or distrust in that relationship. And the common thing is working together, both persons being open, honest, and communicative about where they are. And once they start really getting on the same page, then you start seeing that transformation. You start seeing that trust start to slowly come back into play. And when you do that, you can build a strong, healthy, happy relationship. The other thing is you have to get to a place where you become whole as a person, whether you're the one that did the indiscretion or you're the one that was affected by it. Healing in the relationship is vitally important. Um, Getting accountability partners. If you have a struggle or if you have triggers, having somebody there that can help you be accountable of your actions. Also, being intentional about it. Uh, Searching out the right types of therapy for yourself. Some people like to go on the beach and go walking. Some people like to hike in the mountains. Some people like to go for a long drive. Whatever it is that causes you to be healed and whole in a relationship is going to be the thing that is that will help you to get to a better place. So those are the points that I have for how to recover trust after a fall. I know that the things that Donald is doing in the Readman Project will address some of these things. So make sure you connect with him as soon as you can. So I'm gonna go over those points, and so in case you're taking notes, here are the things that you should be writing down. All right, first, put everything out in the open. Be open, honest, transparent. Second, open yourself up emotionally. Be vulnerable. Be available to give the information that is needed and to be the support that is needed. Have open and honest conversations. Have the hard talks. Have the willingness to be able to hear the things that may not even be um, hard for you to hear, or things that may be difficult for you to grasp. Be transparent. You have to be transparent. You have to be able to really lay yourself down so that you can get a healing and then you can both be whole. You have to be able to forgive, write your goals, and talk with a professional counselor or a professional confidant. Those are the things that I think are vitally important when looking to overcome trust after a fall. The other thing I would say is that really understand if it is you want to recover trust or if you want to get rid of the consequences. And those things will really determine which way you will go and what direction you will take. Again, my name is Andrew Landry. I thank you for your time. You can find me on social media site at Where Men Hurt. Find out about what we're doing. Don and I are working together on some projects. So, Andrew Landry, Where Men Hurt. Again, thank you for your time, and I appreciate Don for having me.